After all these years of working on Warcraft games, I think it still elicits this deep passion in us.
And we've been at this for over 20 years, and every day is a new challenge. Every day I feel like I'm 16 walking into this place. And in this particular expansion, we felt it was really time to go back to our roots.
The Legion expansion is essentially round 3 of the Mortal Worlds fight against the Burning Legion.
The Burning Legion unleashed upon Azeroth. They're back with a vengeance. And we find our heroes having to put aside their differences and, focus on this new threat.
These cinematics really kind of set the stage, set the tone and the theme for the adventure. And this cinematic in particular is integral to the fantasy of Legion.
We've been making these cinematics for a very long time. That's the fabric of WoW. And when everybody's firing on both cylinders on this piece, which they have, it raises the bar to a new height.
We've been very fortunate over the years to have, what I believe is one of the best cinematics team in all of gaming.
These animators are world-class, and they're able to dig in and find a different gear, even a gear that we hadn't even truly thought of.
And the work that Mark Messenger and his team have done on this cinematic has set a new bar for us, and so perfectly captures the tone and the tension, the scale of the conflict to come.
Okay.
What was the first time you heard about the idea behind this expansion?
Basic directive that we got from the game team was that they wanted it to be D-Day. This is the big confrontation, the return of the Burning Legion.
Open fire!
What is the best way to encapsulate this idea of the Horde and the Alliance both fighting bitterly against this, unstoppable foe? We can do big action, we can make amazing things happen. But what makes you care about it, I guess, is what I always come back to. We started trying to think of, well, what could be the heart of the piece? And eventually we did land on Varian. His relationship with his son is very well known. It's very important to the game. And so when that presented itself, it was just like, oh, yeah. That's probably it.
We have a king going to war, and all of what really matters is a message from a father to a son.
Exactly.
My son, a terrible darkness has returned to our world. As before, it seeks to annihilate everything that we hold dear. I go to face it, knowing I may not return.
With the monologue between the dad and his son, it's a little bit of a throwback to the office piece.
My son, the day you were born, the very forests of Lordaeron whispered the name Arthas.
It is definitely important for us to have that echo of the Lich King. We wanted to, say, well, that's kind of the bar. We want to try to achieve something emotionally, but how are you going to bring the spectacle? The very first thing that popped into my head was gunship.
It's been difficult for me to trust after losing so much.
We decided, okay, we want that. We sold it to the game team. It was not a sell. They were like, yes, please, that sounds great. This thing is so heavy as an asset. Are there issues with actually rendering it?
It's a big set, but it's moving. There were a lot of technical requirements to making sure that we could keep all of our assets, our characters, their clothes, their armor, their hair, all in sync, and making sure that all worked was kind of a challenge.
For simming, it ended up being a huge challenge because just moving a character with cloth through space, it's going to be dragged back. We had to develop a lot of tech for counteracting that motion. It was a great undertaking.
From the animation perspective, the biggest challenge was, even though you're animating one character, we almost need to kind of like layer the animation, because whatever the character was doing, he would also be affected by what the ship was doing. And you have hundreds of other pieces that you need to take in consideration. Every change was like a ripple effect.
The modeling team just did a fantastic job on it, and surfacing as well.
First step is we see the concept art, we get super excited, and then we start thinking, all right, so how are we going to build it? So we had to restructure our pipelines to be able to manage multiple assets at once in one scene. It's 14 pieces, and it's a massive, massive asset. Probably the biggest asset we've built.
To reinterpret the game asset into the cinematic space, you're going to have to add the idea of set dressing the piece with a lot of little elements. So we pieced it together bit by bit.
For rigging, it's the ropes kept multiplying, and then we needed extra controls on them, and it just kept getting bigger and bigger.
I wanted to add clouds opening up and have lots of very broad sunlight streaks run across the deck.
Give you a real sense of the scale. Yeah.
So we've got this awesome gunship. It needs to be populated, and that was another thing that we really had to figure out how we were going to do.
We were looking at the overall complexity of the show. We need to do something, again, that we haven't really done before, which is maybe mocap.
We kind of felt it was the right call to use motion capture for the background characters. We knew we wouldn't need to tweak the animation. It was pretty much going to work out of the box.
We get on the stage at Activision, and here's our animators dressed up with the balls all over and the tracking suits, and it was hilarious. It was just really fun. We had a great day.
Do you remember when we were trying to figure out how to get people to fall off the deck?
The guys at Activision built like a 7-foot ramp, and then they start rolling down the deck, and I'm like, I told you not to do stuff like. No, they're like children. They just couldn't help themselves.
Nobody got hurt, right?
Yeah, we had spotters. You guys were spotting, but I was still nervous. It does bring that ship to life. You just read those human shapes moving around, and your brain kind of does the rest. We deal with such fantastic characters and environments and situations, and yet we want you to believe in them. We want you to invest in them. So sometimes it's about making something that's really realistic looking to the eye, and sometimes it's just about pushing it into a level of fantasy that somehow is still resonant in a believable way. Even things like, when we've been talking about what the ocean should look like, how tall should the waves be?
The ocean, I think, is a big achievement for our effects here. It's an ocean surface that you can be on the deck with that camera as well as 100 or 1,000 feet in the sky, and it does exactly what we want.
We had a mixture of ships on the deck. The Alliance ships and the Horde ships on the water are all resurrected from Miss Pandaria.
What's important from the very start was to try and make it feel like Alliance and Horde aren't just fighting the Burning Legion, they're also fighting the environment.
Of course, the Broken Isles themselves, the destination, which would be this awesome zone from the game recreated for the cinematic with this huge fell storm, which Digimat has just done a pretty fantastic job of realizing.
Digimat will paint something, effects will then contribute to it with their own volumetric simulations. Those are the kind of shots that really sell where you are.
The biggest challenge that we would face in the show is not just Varian, but also Sylvanas, and trying to really make both of these very iconic characters believable.
With Varian, we found that fine balance and still look like an epic Blizzard character.
I wanted him to feel like he's been through stuff. We make him just maybe a little bit more worn out, a little bit more haggard, some chisel to the face.
Sylvanas Windrunner, she's like the battle queen. We thought this would be a great opportunity to make her feel like she's ready to take on the Burning Legion. There's a very interesting fine line we had to tread there to make her not come off too white, or too blue. She's undead, but she's not a zombie.
People have no idea how much work goes into these characters. We have moments where we're literally just centered on his eyes. I rush out of the studio just looking at people's eyes to see who had blue eyes. I was just literally just walking around, do you have blue eyes? Do you have blue eyes? Let me look at your eyes.
This is the first time we've taken hair that's gone from dry to underwater. And then he gets out of the water, so it's drying. But it ended up being super fun and a good challenge for us to push it that far.
We did something else that we haven't done before, which is we brought in performers to flesh out the performances themselves. Jim played Varian, and Anna is an actual archer who came in for Sylvanas. It's kind of magical for me because you guys go and you do your due diligence, and then I see it and it's like all of a sudden the emotion is there.
I now believe, as you do, that peace is the noblest aspiration. But to preserve it, you must be willing to fight.
We spent a lot of time working on our heroes, but we spent a lot of time working on our bad guys.
We had these 3 major classes of demons, and we looked for opportunities to introduce ways to have them glow a little bit here and there. For the Infernal, that was simple.
The Fellbat is actually a design that we got from the game team for this expansion. In the Fell Garden, they've had that kind of class of demons in the past, but this is sort of the latest iteration of that.
The first time we saw the, like the Fell Garden concept, it's like, wow, that's so cool. Here we always be moving really fast on screen. Just decided to make sure that it looks very dynamic.
Pretty much all departments heavily involved in that final shot. What is it, 460?
Yeah, and I think it grew. We were able to add more characters into that scene even, and make it really feel like, the worst was yet to come.
Like, man, it is really us against the might of the Burning Legion.
It's not just about animation and character, lighting and effects. There's water in that shot. There's a giant crashing wave, just to add a little bit on top of the whole thing.
It's a really complex shot because there are like so many characters, and every motion of one character affects the other.
That final shot is amazing.
For Azeroth!
I feel like on every level, we've really dedicated ourselves to improving our game that's worthy of the canon of being in the World of Warcraft. It's been a real pleasure for me to work with all of you, as always. I hope we keep doing this until we retire.
Who says anything about retiring?
Okay.